Alrighty, everyone, welcome back to DSP versus the Internet for October 1st, 2023. We're getting through the Ultra member submissions first before we move on to the more generalized submissions. So let's continue on and let's see what the Ultra members wanted me to check out for today. Here we go.
Alright, so we're in bin number 2 now, and this is where we're going to start to really get into the stuff that's been just stacked in here for years. Look at this, we've got
DSP's Gaming Collection Part 2 again. This is Part 2 of what we watched, what was it, last week? Where it's my old school gaming stuff. A lot of this stuff I would not have anymore, because I think this is like old gaming peripherals. Keep in mind, this is a video from 2009. This is 15 years ago. I was going through my old stuff. We're not going to watch this whole thing, but we'll watch a little bit of it. Let's see what's in here.
the GunCon. Is it the 3 or the 4? I don't even know.
Yeah, it's the GunCon for PS3.
GunCon
right?
3. It's the GunCon 3 for the PS3. Let me tell you a little quick story about this gun. When the PS3 was released, one of the games, I believe it was not the launch title, but it was close to launch, was Time Crisis 4, which, by the way, I actually have the box up there for it.
Yeah.
And I like the Time Crisis series a lot, so I ran to the store when I bought my PS3, which was, what, 2 years ago now? Something like that? And I said, I want to get Time Crisis 4, so I got it. And I brought it home, and I mastered the arcade game. I liked it a lot. I mastered it. And then there were unlockable modes, like challenge modes and things. And, ooh, excuse me. I beat all those. And then there was supposed to be, as you can see, there's a thumbstick on this thing right here. There's supposed to be another game built into it. There's dual thumbsticks, actually. There's one up here. Where it was supposed to be like an FPS shooter you use with your GunCon. And let me tell you something. It was the worst fucking game I ever played. It was on the same disc as Time Crisis 4. But it was god-awful. You could tell it was just some kind of a side thought. It wasn't really a major focus of theirs. And so after that, I was like, all right.
Why don't I do this style of video anymore? I cleaned out literally my entire closet last year. If you remember, during the summer of last year, I called it the Closet Cleanout Event. And it was 2 entire weekend streams where it was like 8-hour marathons of cleaning out this closet. So I literally just did this a year ago. The thing is, you can only accumulate clutter over several years. You know what I mean? So maybe in 5 more years, we could do it again. And we could clean out the closet again. But for now, there's really nothing to see that you haven't seen last year. It's all the same stuff. You understand?
You know, it's okay because there's going to be lots of great shooters for the PS3, right? Like, I'm sure they'll do House of the Dead 3 and 4. I'm sure they'll do all these games. Well, guess how many of those games came out for the PS3? 0. Fucking 0. I bought this gun and there's nothing to play with it. There's no games worth playing with the GunCon. So what a waste of fucking money that was. Well, not really, I guess, because it was good when, like I said, when...
That did piss me off. I remember buying it. It was expensive to get the set. The set with the gun and everything, and yeah, I never played it. It was just Time Crisis 4. That was it. Like, nothing else used it. Wow, what a stupid rip. Especially because it was a gun that had thumbsticks on it. So you think, oh, this will be like a flexible peripheral. Other game companies will develop games for it. No one did. So I couldn't play any guns on that fucking thing, or any games on that thing.
Time Crisis 4 came out, but after that, no reason to have. So here's half of my Guitar Hero wireless guitar. Where's the other half? Here it is.
Old one.
For $360. And funny story about this, I bought this, it was a discount, it was like on sale, it was the wireless package. I think it was Guitar Hero 3, if I'm not mistaken, where you get the game and you get the guitar together. This fucking guitar barely works. Like, there's 2 buttons on it that when you push them down, they only register half the time. So wow, I'm glad that you made a wireless guitar that fucking doesn't work, assholes.
That was Mad Cats who had made the peripherals for Guitar Hero. What an interesting story, that whole Bamani craze, where for a while Guitar Hero, Rock Band, you know, all those games were so hugely prominent and were selling like hotcakes. And then the fad died. And it literally destroyed an entire company. Like, it was Mad Cats, I believe. And then Harmonix was making Rock Band. So all those companies who were making the peripherals over-manufactured the crap out of them, thinking that the fad would continue. And the fad died. And then they had literally warehouses full of that shit. It was nowhere to sell it. So a lot of those companies ended up going out of business. Even Mad Cats is the weirdest one. We watched the story of Mad Cats here on the channel several weeks ago. It was one of the videos for this show. How odd that they were at the top of their game. They were making peripherals for music. Then they made joysticks for Street Fighter. Everything was going right with them. And then they invested all their money in junk and completely just tanked their own company, not understanding that the fads wouldn't continue and you had to keep jumping on the next thing, and they didn't. Pretty bad.
The time when Rock Band had just come out and everyone was complaining about the Rock Band guitar, so I go out and buy a Guitar Hero guitar and that doesn't work either. Here we have the bag of randomness. This bag probably has game pads, wires to consoles, AC adapters, accessories.
Yeah,
Look at the randomness. Here's the 6.
I used to call this like the random bag of chords. And I had this for like, I'm not kidding, I had this for like 10, 15 years. Everywhere I moved, everywhere I went, I would take it with me. It was like audio-visual cables, random controllers, you know, all random shit. You're like, would I ever use this? Some of it I did, and most of it I did not. So eventually I just ended up throwing all that shit out. So.
6-button Sega Genesis pad for Genesis fighting games. Essential, because if you have a 6-button game, you're not going to want to keep pressing start to switch between kicks and punches, and whoever thought that was a viable option for a fighting game should be shot, cocksucker. Anyway, here's my zapper, which, by the way, is still functional. Problem is I don't have Duck Hunt anymore, but what you'll notice is this is the orange model zapper. There were actually 2 models of zapper released. There was the original gray gunmetal, but it wasn't really gunmetal, it was just gray, and then there was this orange. The reason that they made this orange gun was because people were complaining that the original gun looked too much like a real gun. If someone were to point this fucking thing at you, would you think it's a real gun? Give me a fucking break. Tell the police to use their fucking eyes. How about that? This is an interesting story. This is my old Pyro audio-visual link by ADS. What this used to do is it used to capture audio and video from games and game footage, and it used to basically encode it on my computer. As you can see, it had FireWire, it had your...
I think I barely ever used this, if I remember correctly. I almost never used this, because it didn't do good quality. Like, nothing back then did good quality. That's why, until the era of, like the second half of the 2000s into the early 2010s, you'll notice there's almost no good gameplay on anywhere. Even people who were doing like series of video games, the video quality is just shit. There was nothing to capture that really worked well. Yeah.
Component video, your S video, had all kinds of different inputs and outputs. I used this for a while, but then after a while I didn't need it anymore. And obviously now that I have an HD camera and the technology's advanced so much since back then when we had to use things like that, there's no reason to have. In fact, here's a FireWire cable. That's a fucking piece of shit.
FireWire.
I'm never going to use that again. No one uses FireWire. I got so many audio-visual cables, monster audio-video cables, adapters, DVI to fucking VGA.
I don't even remember a time when FireWire was that prominent. Like, I remember when I worked at, like, Circuit City. You're like, you need to have that FireWire cable for your computer. And everyone was like, why? I was like, oh, because everything's going to use it. And then nothing ever did. Right? It was like everything could use USB too, so why would you care about FireWire? Even though I know FireWire was faster transfer, but it wasn't that big of a deal. No, Derek, all this has been thrown out. I don't have any of this. Like, literally not a single thing we're watching now do I have. Maybe the Zapper. Maybe the Nintendo Zapper. But outside of that, I don't think I have any of this stuff. Anyway, we've watched this for like 7 minutes. Let's continue on here. Okay. Is it weird hearing my own voice? Not really. What used to freak me out, I used to hear my own voice recorded on like a phone recording, and that would freak me out. But now, you have to understand I'm a YouTuber for 15 years, so I've heard my own voice played back for 15 straight years. It's not weird to me anymore. So, if anything, the reason my voice sounds a little different in this, number one, my voice octave has changed over the years. Now I have a little bit more deepness to my voice. Back then I did not. Back then it was all just high-pitched. And in addition, this is a camera right there with bad quality. It's not, now I have a microphone that it picks up the audio much better. So that's why this is a little camera mic. It sounds a lot different. So, okay, what is next?
In fighting games, performing the Daigo parry or certain combos requires precise timing. Press an input a moment too early or too late.
Why Rollback Netcode is better? Okay, let's fast forward and find out.
Move on both screens. But this is terrible to play in unless the delay between both players is very short. But not everyone has super good internet connections, and not everyone lives in the same region. If everyone could play offline together, lag wouldn't be a problem.
Exactly.
But we live in a world where arcades die and viruses live, so net play matters a lot. Sadly, there's no way to remove the delay between two distant online connections, but Tony Cannon discovered a way to make it so your move appears immediately, even before it reaches your opponent.
I started working on this around in like late 2005, early 2006.
Oh, I remember.
And it was because all the games that were coming out for the consoles just had really bad delay-based netcode.
What's insane about this technology is that it's achieved by predicting the future and time traveling. Seriously.
2015?
And this is why it sucks, because it's guessing. I've told you guys this a million times that this rollback netcode, it literally rolls the dice. It literally rolls dice to decide what happens. Half the time you're not getting the right outcome, but oh well, there's no lag. It's like, what? But that's okay, right? Anyway.
You mean we're in the future?
Let's say there's 45 milliseconds of delay between you and your opponent. If the character you control has no lag and your move comes out before the input reaches your opponent, what does your opponent see? If you kick and your opponent's side sees it 45 milliseconds later, both sides are now 45 milliseconds out of sync, which is no good. But there is a way to get it in sync. When your opponent's side receives your input, it can just skip the first 45 milliseconds of your kick animation. You might be thinking this could look weird or choppy, but at full speed, it's hard to tell. It's like when everyone starts singing Happy Birthday, but you join in a little late. You skip the first words of the song so you'll be in sync and no one will notice. But if your opponent receives all your actions 45 milliseconds late, what do you look like to them in the meantime? In our kick example, you were shown to be just standing there for 45 milliseconds before kicking. Why did their side think you were just standing there? Because it was its best guess. It was a wrong guess, but it was reasonable considering you were standing there previously. At any given moment, each side is trying to predict what the opponent is currently doing based on the previously received input. And what's crazy is, most of the time it's correct. This is because it doesn't take a fortune teller to predict things one frame into the future.
I'm just going to assume the thing you did last is the thing you do next, like forever. Oh, you were holding back to block? I'm going to assume you're still holding back to block.
Can you guess what my sleeping cats will do in the next frame? If you guess sleep, then you might just be a precog. Obviously, you knew the answer because you saw what they were doing previously. But just like a precog, predictions can be wrong. To clearly show what happens with incorrect predictions, let's just say there's a huge 500 millisecond delay with your opponent. If your opponent is walking forward, your side will correctly predict their position because there's only one direction to predict, forward. But if they suddenly do something different like jump, your side will still think they're walking because it didn't get the memo yet. But the moment your side receives the news that your opponent jumped 500 milliseconds ago, it will instantly roll them back to your opponent's correct position, which is in midair at this point. Hence, rollback netcode. Remember, this was an extreme case. With normal amounts of delay, the amount of rollback would be practically unnoticeable. Rollback netcode works because when the predictions are correct, things are in sync, and when it's not, it gets corrected before anyone notices. Sometimes huge lag spikes can go unnoticed if all the predictions are correct in that time, and you might be surprised just how often the predictions are correct.
How fast do people move the controller? How many inputs are there? There's probably...
And here's why this netcode is complete bunk, and people don't understand why it's junk. Because it allows for people who play exactly the same all the time to always have advantage. Because think of what they're saying. It's going to assume that what you were just doing is what you're still doing. So what if you always do the same thing? So you always get what you want because the code favors you. What about someone who's unpredictable? What about someone who mixes up what they're doing all the time? That's their game style. What about someone who has a reactive play style? They wait to see what you're doing, then they react to it to stop it. Well, that's not favored by rollback netcode. This netcode says just do the standard thing over and over, and you'll always get what you want because the rollback assumes you're still doing the same thing. Just think about that. The netcode 100% skews what you're going to see as an outcome online because it literally is trying to predict based off of what you've already been doing and essentially rolls the dice and says, well, the person who did that fierce punch 7 times in a row is probably just going to do the fierce punch again, so give it to them. But the person who tried to react to the fierce punch and do the shoryuken through it, don't give them the shoryuken. Give the other person the fierce punch. Why? Oh, because that's rollback netcode, bro. It's just give you the same thing over and over. And then if it happens to catch the mistake, it'll try to fix it after the fact. But it's too late. The game's already ruined. That's rollback netcode. That's what people think is good. Oh, that's the best. Dude, what are you talking about? You're literally favoring people who play like dunces. People who literally do the same fucking thing all the time. They don't think. They just play. You favor them. Why do you think the online pattern play is so prominent in modern fighting games? But idiotic people demand the rollback netcode. All right? This is lazy man's netcode. This is, we didn't actually have an intelligent way to solve the problem, so we mask the problem instead of solving the problem. That's exactly what this is. Because rollback netcode makes the match look like it's not laggy, when in reality it's not. You're actually not getting the outcome that actually happened on the controller. You're getting whatever the netcode guessed was happening, and then it might happen to fix it after the fact. The other thing they haven't addressed, and I don't know if they will, dropped inputs. Rollback netcode has a significant amount of dropped inputs because when it's trying to make, what's the word? When they're trying to figure out what really happened and catch the game back up, sometimes it just will say, fuck it, and it'll just drop the input. I had this fucking conversation with that man in an IRC chat. All right? This very conversation we're having right now in this video and on this stream, I had it directly with that man in an IRC chat room in the mid-2000s when he was trying to sell Rollback Netcode to Capcom. All right? And I put all of this data and all of this information and analysis on shoryuken.com where they had a thread. He made the thread on, that's his website. He had the thread saying, I want feedback on Rollback. And all the feedback that was positive, they left, and everything that was negative, they deleted. And I went to this man on IRC, and I said, why are you deleting criticism that's true? I said, are you going to tell me that Rollback Netcode is not dropping inputs to rectify the two sides? He said, no, it does that. So you're admitting it to me. Yes, I will admit to you that the Rollback Netcode eats inputs on purpose to rectify it, to make it look like there's no lag. So why don't you want people to know that? Because I'm trying to sell the netcode to Capcom and I don't need them to know that. He told me that. Okay. And this was the mid-2000s. We're now almost 20 years later. And people still are like, oh, Rollback Netcode's the best. Oh, you mean the netcode that literally just rewards someone who plays exactly the same over and over and doesn't reward someone who's smart and tries to react to what they're seeing? The netcode that literally eats inputs to make it look like there's no lag? That's the best netcode? Again, it's a band-aid on the problem to make the game look better online. It doesn't give you a better actual situation or better outcome. It's not better connection. It just looks better because the rollback hides the lag. So you would never know. You would never know if someone's doing a special move and it drops their input because the netcode hides it. But somehow we reward this man. Oh, he's so smart. Yeah, you're so smart because you hid the fucking problems and brushed them under the rug instead of fixing them. But don't say anything to Capcom because I'm trying to sell the netcode. Now every major game uses this netcode. For what? It's not good. We for 20 years almost, people thinking this is the best netcode. No, it's not. You need to, there's much, we could definitely, if people wouldn't just accept this as the solution, all right, we would have people actually actively trying to fix it. But instead, people have just accepted rollback's the best. We can't get any better. So, that's it. Yeah, it's bullshit. It pisses me off because an entire community always saying this nonsense, and I was the only one who would be the one willing to speak up about this shit. Rollback netcode is not good. All it does is make the game look good and drops your inputs in order to hide the truth. I'm sorry. They just fucking explained it. That's what it does. So if you're doing the same thing over and over, if you're Guile and you throw Sonic Boom, you walk forward, medium punch, Sonic Boom, medium punch, you'll get that 99% of the time. The guy who tries to react to your Sonic Boom, like jump over it, won't get to jump over it. Because that's something different than what the game thought you were going to do the millionth time in a row. So you don't get it. And then if you do get it, it might drop your input anyway to hide the lag. So therefore, you still get hit by the Sonic Boom. Why do you think no one can react to projectiles in Street Fighter 6? This is fucking why. This fucking guy is the reason why no one can jump over Guile. All right. Anyway, and that's the thing. Will you ever hear anyone in the FGC say that? Nope. So like I told you guys, this guy's working on a fighting game right now, correct? Whatever it is, the League of Legends fighting game. Why on earth would I ever want to play that game? This is the guy who for 20 fucking years has been pushing this shit down people's throats to make a buck. But, I got banned from SRK for talking about it. I did. I got banned from shoryuken.com at that time for being honest. And when I confronted him on IRC, he listened. Listen, I'm just trying to make a living, man. You can't be saying this stuff. You can't be talking truth. Oh. So I guess I should just keep my mouth shut and never speak truth in my life so that you can make a buck. Gotcha. All right. Well, I guess we can move on now. The video literally proved my points about Rollback Netcode. To a T. Everything I've said over the years, this video has proved it. It's very interesting. I'm not sure that's what was intended, but it certainly did it. All right. Let's go ahead and continue. We'll do one more video for this part, and then we'll move on. By the way, I am absolutely no one in the fighting game community. I'm a nobody. Okay? No one cares about what I say. No one will listen to me. No one. No one gives a shit. No one did back then either. So, it will continue. People will continue to have wool pulled over their eyes. They want to believe that everything is unicorns and rainbows and roses, and they could do that. They can enjoy their Rollback Netcode. I know it's shit. Okay.
It's not an accident that the axiomatic Western individual is someone who was unfairly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes, right, exactly. So what do you do about that? Well, I thought about that for a long time too. It's like, well, you don't get together in a damn mob, because all that does is allow you to be as horrible as you could possibly imagine and suffer from none of the consequences. That's a bad idea. So how about we don't do that? Well, there's a deep idea in the West too. It's like, pick up your damn suffering and bear it and try to be a good person so you don't make it worse. Well, that's a truth. You know, I read a lot about the terrible things that people have done to each other. You just cannot even imagine it. It's so awful. So you don't want to be someone like that. Now, do you have a reason to be? Yes. You have lots of reasons to be. God, there's reasons to be resentful about your existence. Everyone you know is going to die. You know, you too. And there's going to be a fair bit of pain along the way, and lots of it's going to be unfair. It's like, yeah, no wonder you're resentful. It's like, act it out and see what happens. You make everything you're complaining about infinitely worse. There's this idea that hell is a bottomless pit, and that's because no matter how bad it is, some stupid son of a bitch like you could figure out a way to make it a lot worse. So you think, well, what do you do about that? Well, you accept it. That's what life is like. It's suffering. That's what the religious people have always said. Life is suffering. Yes. Well, who wants to admit that? Well, just think about it. Well, so what do you do?
By the way, I'm not saying anything because I'm trying to listen to all his points and absorb it before I say anything. Okay.
In the face of that suffering, try to reduce it. Start with yourself. What good are you? Get yourself together, for Christ's sake, so that when your father dies, you're not whining away in a corner, and you can help plan the funeral, and you can stand up solidly so that people can rely on you. That's better. Don't be a damn victim. Of course you're a victim. Jesus, obviously. Put yourself together. And then maybe if you put yourself together, you know how to do that. You know what's wrong with you, if you'll admit it. You know there's a few things you could, like, polish up a little bit, that you might even be able to manage in your insufficient present condition. And so you might shine yourself up a little bit, and then your eyes will be a little more open, and then you can shine yourself up a little bit more, and then maybe you could bring your family together instead of having them be the hateful, spiteful, neurotic, infighting batch that you're, like, doomed to spend Christmas with. So then you fix yourself up a little bit, and then you got to figure out, well, can you figure out how to make peace with your idiot brother? And probably not, because he's just as dumb as you, so how the hell are you going to manage that? And so then maybe you get somewhere that way, and your family's sort of functioning, and you find out, well, that kind of relieved a little bit of suffering, although it reduced the opportunities for spiteful revenge, and that's kind of a pain in the neck. And so then you get your family together a little bit, and you're a little clued in then, at least a bit, because you've done something difficult that's actually difficult. You're a little wiser, and so then maybe you could put a tentative finger out beyond the family and try to change some little thing without wrecking it. So, and that's the other message of the West. It's like, how do you overcome the suffering of life? And I'm not saying it's only the message of the West. How do you overcome the suffering of life? Is be a better person. That's how you do it. Well, that's hard. It takes responsibility. And I think, you know, if you said to someone, you want to have a meaningful life? Everything you do matters. That's the definition of a meaningful life. But everything you do matters. So you're going to have to carry that with you. Or do you want to just forget about the whole meaning thing, and then you don't have any responsibility, because who the hell cares? And you can wander through life doing whatever you want, gratifying impulsive desires for how useful that's going to be. And you're stuck in meaninglessness, but you don't have any responsibility. Which one do you want?
See, what he just said there, I mean, I'm listening, I'm trying to absorb different points that he's making about make the best of your life, do things to improve the lives of others, don't just sit around and say you can't do anything, don't be a professional victim, you know, all these things. I think what he just said is super important. And by the way, I know who this guy is. I do not follow him. I don't necessarily agree with all or any of the things he says. All right, just to be clear, I'm not a follower of Jordan Peterson. I know there's a lot of controversy and a lot of things on the internet about this guy that people don't like, all right? But what he just said struck a chord with me. He said, everything that you do in life has meaning, right? Everything. It doesn't matter how little or small or meaningless it might seem to you, you know? And I think that's kind of true, that everything in life does have meaning, everything you do. Because I think, sadly, there's too many people who go through life and figure everything's meaningless or I don't matter. And because of that, nothing will ever get better for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, even I mean, obviously, I'm gonna compare this to myself and my own position, what I do for a living, and things like that. How many times do I say things such as, I feel like everything that I do on YouTube has meaning, right? Like every video I put out, this video has meaning. A gameplay video I put out has meaning. A podcast I put out has meaning. I want it to have meaning for my viewing audience. I don't ever want you to feel like I made a video on YouTube that literally I just pumped out a product for profits and I didn't care about it. Okay? I want you to understand that. Like I really do these days. Maybe not so when I started on YouTube. But today, every piece of content that I put out for you guys, I want you to feel like I try to put some meaning behind it. Because I want you to get something out of it that maybe could help you. Maybe it's a smile on your face. Maybe it's a piece of intelligent thought. Whatever it could be. Okay? Whatever it may be. But I feel like there's so many people, you know, in life that just don't care. Today I'm putting out junk. I don't care if it's bunk or junk. As long as I profit from it or I make money on it or... You know what I'm saying? Like, how many people on YouTube put out content and they don't realize or don't care that what they do has meaning? And it could be a good or bad meaning. It could be very bad what they're doing. But they don't care as long as they put out something that got them over for the day or made them money or whatever it might be. How many people make a living hurting others, but they're not ever held responsible or accountable for it? He literally just said that. If you don't live your life feeling like every single thing you do has some kind of meaning behind it, then you can live a life of absolutely no responsibility whatsoever. You could just say, I'm free to do whatever I want because there's never any real consequences. Who cares who it hurts? Who gives a shit? Right? I think a lot of people live that way today. And that's really messed up and sad. How many people on earth actually have the kind of thoughts like he's describing? And by the way, you could tell that his line of rationale is based on Christian thinking and Christian religion. All right? So I'm definitely not saying that what he's saying is truth or absolute. Okay? But how many people are probably right now going through their lives, humans on this planet, and they don't have big picture thoughts like this at all about what's my meaning, what's my purpose, am I doing things that are meaningful to myself or others around me? Am I helping others? Am I improving the situation? Or they literally just go through life, every moment is complaining about something that's not fair, that's not right, but they never try to fix it or they never try to improve anything. And the thing is, not that you can fix everything, because you can't. The older I get, the more I realize there's way less than I can really change or fix. I wish there was more. You know, I see things around me, horrible things every day, that I wish that I could do something to improve. And I know I'm powerless to help with many of these things. Okay? But essentially, the way I see it is, at least I can do what I can. What's in my power. You know, if I could go have a day where I come on a stream and I say something that's insightful. I play a game and I do it in a way that entertains someone, makes you laugh, makes your day feel better. I feel like I did something good for people on the internet or the world in general for that day. You know, I go outside and maybe I do something nice outside of my house one day. And you guys wouldn't know about that because I don't even tell you about that stuff because the amount of harassment I get, right? But it's what I mean. Like living your life and having those actual thoughts as opposed to someone who just goes through motions every day. Just go through motions, right? Because this is all I do. I just exist. There's no meaning to anything I do. There's no consequence for anything I do. I just continue to exist, right? Just having a thought like that I should have meaning in what I do today, could change someone's life. And I think, sadly, a lot of people on Earth don't have those thoughts. They don't have internal thoughts like this. They don't have internal dialogue of big picture thoughts. Instead, it's just continue that level of I suffer all day, every day. I'm a professional victim. All I do is I wallow in my own sadness of that everything's not perfect. You know, how do you think we had entire groups on social media that all they do is complain all day on social media about how unfair life is and how bad their lives are, right? At one point, you got to put that away, push that away, and say, it's time to move on and do other things that are more productive, right? And I had an epiphany years ago. I did. Where I said, instead of being a negative person who's always focused on the bad, I'm going to actively try to change my mindset to become a person who's going to focus on what's good. Like, for as many bad things are going on in the world and around me and with me in my life, there's also equally likely a lot of good things going on. So it's time to focus on those. And then how do I improve those? How do I make more of those? How do I create those good moments for others as well, right? How do I do that? That's really, in my opinion, the way to go through life once you get to a level where you can have those kind of thoughts. Maybe some people will never get there. Maybe some people will just always live their life only reacting to the things around them that directly affect them in that moment, and then it's complaining about the things they can't control. But I do feel like in life, if you look at bigger picture things, it could be very beneficial, right? I've said this. I don't, for my perspective, I don't adhere to any particular religious beliefs or political beliefs, but what I like is getting different inputs from different perspectives. I may not agree with a lot of the things that this guy says, especially when it comes to his religious beliefs, okay? But I can totally listen to this video of what he's saying and completely understand what he's trying to say, the core of the message. Don't just be a victim all day. Instead, brush yourself off, realize everyone's a victim in life, and instead move forward positively and do good things or things to improve. Everything you do has meaning. Even as little as trivial as it may seem, it could be something that really helps someone else. Boy, have I started to totally understand that, because now I realize just a simple thing I say on a stream, and I don't mean for it to have meaning, can have tons of meaning to someone on the other end of the internet listening, you know? So I try to be careful. And listen, just like everyone else, I'm a weak person and I make mistakes, and I'll have days when awful things happen. You know, I had a few of them this last week where, you know, I'm freaking out on the stream, getting so angry over what, right? What's the point of that? But for me, like, I'm trying to be better actively, and I'm trying not to be that toxic person that I know I used to be back in the day. You know, we talk about Street Fighter community, how toxic I used to be when I was part of that community for a long time. But I've had changes of thought, I've had epiphanies, and you know, you listen to something like this, you're like, yeah, this guy, even though I don't agree with the complete argument of what he's saying, simply listening to his overall behind the scenes, the message resonates with me. So I think that's what we'll call this. We watched it for about 5 minutes. I think that's what we'll call this one, because I think we kind of got the message. All right, guys, it is time to split the part. I thank you all for watching DSP versus the internet. We have probably one more part of Ultra members, and then we'll probably get into the general member submissions. We don't have that many more Ultra member submissions to go through this week. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in part 3 for episode 33.